Welcome back to another episode of the IFC's Individuation podcast. I'm Dr. Lahab Al-Samarrai. As always, with me, the Wrecking Crew. Dr. Lisa Hung is with us and Dr. Eric Tomlinson. How is everybody doing today?
Great. How are you?
I am fantastic. The sun is shining in Seattle. I am happy.
Yeah.
Today, we're gonna go with an English fairy tale, the Child Roland. And we will start this now. Okay, who wants to go first? Lisa, you want to go?
Sure.
Okay.
I'll go first. Here we go. Today we're going to read an English fairy tale called Child Roland. The boy Child Roland was once playing ball with his two elder brothers and their sister. Roland kicked the ball so hard and went over the church. His sister, Bird Ellen, went to fetch it, but never returned. The eldest brother then went to the warlock Merlin to ask where his sister was. Warlock Merlin answered that she must have been carried off by the fairies because she went round the church windershins. She is now in the Dark Tower of the King of Elfland. It would take the boldest knight in Christendom to bring her back. The eldest brother begged to go search for his sister after good advice from Warlock Merlin. He left, but never returned. Then the second eldest brother tried, and he too never returned. So then, Child Roland begged to try. His mother, the good queen, was wont to let him go, but he insisted, and she gave him a brand and put a good luck spell on it. Warlock Merlin advised him also, instructing him on one thing to do and one thing not to do. The first, he should cut off the head of everyone he meets until he gets to Bird Ellen with his brand, and that he should not eat a bite nor drink a drop, no matter how hungry or thirsty, as long as he was in Elfland. So Child Roland said these things over and over again until he knew them by heart, thanked Warlock Merlin, and went on his way. He went along and still further along until he came to the land of the fairies. There he asked a rider, then a cowherd, and then an old woman in a gray cloak for directions. Each time, after they told him, he cut off their heads with his brand. He went on until he came to the round hill with terrace rings and went around it 3 times, windershins against the sun, and said the words that the old woman told him, open door, and let me in." And the 3rd time, the door of the dark tower did open, and he went in, and it closed with a click, and Child Roland was left in the dark.
And it was not exactly dark, but a kind of twilight or gloaming. There were neither windows nor candles, and he could not make out where the twilight came from, if not through the walls and roof. These were rough arches made of a transparent rock encrusted with sheep silver and rock spar and other bright stones. But even though it was rock, the air was quite warm, as it always was in Elfland. So he went through this passage till at last he came to 2 wide and high folding doors, which stood ajar. When he opened them, there he saw a most wonderful and glorious sight, a large and spacious hall, so large that it seemed to be as long and as broad as the green hill itself. The roof was supported by fine pillars, so large and lofty that the pillars of a cathedral were as nothing to them. They were all of gold and silver and fretted work, and between them and around them, wreaths of flowers, composed of, what do you think? Why, of diamonds and emeralds and all manner of precious stones. And the very keystones of the arches had for ornaments clusters of diamonds and rubies and pearls and other precious stones. And all these arches met in the middle of the roof, and just there, hung by a gold chain, an immense lamp made out of one big pearl, hollowed out and quite transparent. And in the middle of this was a big, huge carbuncle, which kept spinning round and round. And this was what gave light by its rays to the whole hall, which seemed as if the setting sun was shining on it. In the middle was his sister, Bird Ellen. They were so happy to see each other again, but his sister was under the spell of the king of the elves and could not warn him when he said he was hungry. Roland almost took a bite to eat, but at the last moment remembered what Warlock Merlin had told him and dashed the bowl. The Elven King entered, announced that he smelled Christian blood, and challenged Roland to fight him. With his trusty brand, Roland defeated the giant and made him bring back his brothers to life and to disenchant his sister. Then the four children left the dark tower, never to return there again.
Okay.
Wow, two stories in a row with happy endings.
Well, this is interesting, right? We have Merlin in this story. We haven't had he's kind of the superstar of the magic world.
Yeah.
So he is the one who is advising, and he's being called warlock in this. They've called him wizard, they've called him magician, and here they're calling him warlock. Okay, so what are our thoughts today? What do we think of the story? Eric?
Once again, what I like is the fact, just like last story, the character got to finish his journey. And the journey was successful. And he followed the rules and came back victorious.
Okay.
So we don't see that much in the fairy tales. And yet here it is again.
Well,
in these fairy tales that we've been reading. Right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of loss in the fairy tale, usually. By the time we get to the end of it, there's a lot of psychological consciousness that comes about because of the loss. And that's one of the points. So let's take a look at this. So Roland kicks a ball so hard, it goes over the church, and he sends his sister, Bird Ellen, to fetch it. She never returns. Then the eldest brother went to the warlock Merlin to ask where his sister was. And Merlin answered that she must have been carried off by the fairies, because she went round the church, wider shins. She is now in the dark tower of the king of the Elfland. It would take the boldest knight in Christendom to bring her back. The eldest brother begged to go search for his sister, and after good advice from the warlock Merlin, he left, but never returned. So the first one goes after the ball, she doesn't return. The second one goes after the sister, he doesn't return. Then the second eldest brother, he too also went to Merlin, also got advice, and he did not return. So then the child Roland begged to try. Give me a chance. This is a good story for Sam. Give me a chance. I can do this. The older brother failed, the middle brother failed, the sister is gone. The younger brother says, the child Roland, he's even called Child, begged to try. Let me do this. Can I do this? Okay. So our quest is always an initiation quest. So the hero's journey is an initiation quest. You're initiated to become, if you were a boy, you become a man. If you were a girl, you become a woman. The initiation of our hero into the world. This is how our hero takes his or her place in the world. So he begs his mother, the good queen, was not to let him go, but he insisted, and she gave him a brand and put a good luck spell on it. In our other stories, we've had good luck spells given by witches. This is a good luck spell given by a queen. And he also went to Merlin. So Merlin, for those who don't know Merlin, Merlin is a famous wizard. There have been magicians and wizards and healers and shamans. Merlin's name has stuck around for a very long time. And his name is bandied about. As also, his claim to fame was he was one of the greatest wizards or warlocks or magicians who ever lived. So he goes to Merlin. Merlin advises him, also instructed him on one thing to do and one thing not to do. So here's your quest. You get one thing that you can do and one thing you can't do. Now, those are simple rules, right? Well, as we've seen, those simple rules get broken all the time, and then chaos comes about. The first, he should cut off the head of everyone he meets until he gets to Bird Ellen with his brand. Okay, so everybody's an enemy between him and her. What stands between him and her is an enemy, somebody who stands in the way, somebody who gets in the way, somebody who has to have their head cut off. Okay. And that he should not eat a bite or not drink a drop, no matter how hungry or thirsty, as long as he was in their land. This is an old, this is used in many different fairy tales. Where the food is dangerous. The food is the trap. So if you eat the food, you're trapped in the underworld. If you eat the food, then you're trapped in Elf's land. So Child Roland said these things over and over again until he knew them by heart. So he memorized them. Thanked the warlock Merlin and went on his way. Okay, he went along and still further along until he came to the land of the fairies. So the fairies are our mystical creatures that lived in enchanted woods. They had wings and they could fly, and they had speed, and they were made of magic, and they can use magic. He went along and along, still further along, until he came to the land of the fairies. There he asked a rider then a cowherd, then an old woman in a gray cloak for directions. So he has three people for directions. A person on a horse, somebody who was herding cattle, and an old woman in a gray cloak. Each time after they told him, he cut off their heads with his brand. He went on until he came to the round hill with the terrace. So this is like the three witches, right? He has to face the evil witches, and he has to fight the evil witches. These are the evil witches. With the terrace rings, and went around it 3 times, wider shins against the sun, and said the words that the old woman had told him. Open door, let me come in. And the 3rd time, the door of the dark tower did open. And he went in, and it closed with a click, and Child Roland was left in the dark, deep within the unconscious. He was able to enter with a magical spell. Open door, open door. It's basically open sesame.
So I'm going to go back to a couple stories that kind of parallels, even though they don't say in this story, but I bet we can fill in that when he talked to the writer said, you must continue further and talk to the cowherd. And he continued farther, and the cowherd said, you must continue farther even still, and you will find an old lady. Just parallel to the other stories, how he must journey deeper and deeper and deeper to reach the final Baba Yaga kind of figure who actually tells him how to summon the door.
Yeah, so deep within the unconscious, the anima sits. So the unconscious is symbolic of the anima. So she is everything. She is the door. She is the entrance. She is the dark
path.
Yeah, she is the path. She is the direction. She is, but this is the illusion. The illusion is the deeper I go, the scarier it becomes. Right? So you could have moved 5 steps away from the door, but because it's so dark, you can't see where the door is anymore. Now you think you are really deep within. And so within the unconscious, there is no past, there's no present, there's no future. Time doesn't really exist. You could be at any time. You could be in a body of your 15-year-old self, thinking like your 50-year-old self or 70-year-old self, and walking around. And so you can have shapeshifters in the unconscious. You transform into the unconscious. You transform into a part of you that you think you are. So this is a part of you. This is not all of you. So you're seeing a part of you, and that's what you think you are. So deep within the unconscious, or deep within the dream, in the dream world, we call it the dream ego, because it's not you in the dream. It's an I that says it's you. It's a dream ego. It's not your ego because you're unconscious. And because you're unconscious, your ego is not conscious of it. So that's why it's a dream ego. It's a piece of you deep within the unconscious that represents you, that you identify with. So all the other pieces in the dream usually, so all the other pieces, so the people who are you're battling, the people who are you're taking their heads off or asking them for directions, all of them are a piece of you. But in the fairy tale and in the dream, you're trying to get to the essence of the story. You're trying to get to the essence of the fairy tale. What is this fairy tale telling me? And so Lisa's point is that each of these characters gives him a different outlook onto what he is doing and what he must do. But he has to abide by the rules that Merlin set before he sent him. Which is, after you hear what they have to say, cut their heads off. Why? Because they'll swallow you whole. You'll be trapped. It was not exactly dark, but a kind of twilight or gloaming. There were neither windows nor candles. He could not make out where the twilight came from. If not through the walls and the roof, these were rough arches made of transparent rock, encrusted with sheep, silver, and rock spark, other bright stones. But though it was rock, the air was quite warm, as it always was in Elfland. So it's not really day, it's not really night. I'm not sure what it is. It's kind of, there's a gloom. So he went through the passage till at last he came to wide, high, folding doors which stood ajar. And when he opened them, there he saw a most wonderful and glorious sight. So light comes out. That's the glorious sight. So light is symbol of consciousness. It's a symbol of knowing. It's a symbol of, I found it, I understand it, I got it. Now everything makes sense. That type of consciousness. Now that I know this, everything makes sense to me. Where before, things didn't make sense. Okay, so a large spacious hall. He comes to a large and spacious hall, so large that it seemed to be as long, as broad as the green hill itself. The roof was supported by fine pillars so large and lofty that the pillars of the cathedral were as nothing to them. They were all of gold and silver and fretted work, and between them, around them, wreaths of flowers composed of, what do you think? Why? Of diamonds, emeralds, and all manner of precious stone. Remember, when you're deep within the unconscious, that's where the treasure lies. Do not be fooled by the treasure. You're coming in for an objective. There's a reason you're in there. Don't stray from the path.
That's a good point, Dr. Lahab, because most of I think that's a very good point, because so much of the time we tend to fight what's on the inside. We tend to fight the unconscious as if it's our enemy. And all it's trying to do is to get us to connect with it and understand it. And in a way, it's asking for our help and guidance as well. Because we can project human attributes on it and make it come alive.
So deep within the conscious, you find yourself and you find what you're looking for. And then you find stuff that you weren't looking for, but might be looking really cool at the time. You know, maybe I should stay for this, right? Well, part of that is telling you, is this is how you move in the world. You go after an object and something shiny comes up and you lose your way. You forget what your objective was, what you were going to do. The unconscious reflects what you are already doing and what you shouldn't be doing and what you should be doing. Right? So all conflicts are resolved within the unconscious once you understand the story. The conflict is resolved. Every conflict you have is resolved within the dream. The unconscious doesn't keep material from you, it gives it to you. It tells you what the problem is, it tells you the solution. The question is, are you listening? Do you want to listen? That's always the difficult part. Do I want to listen? Do I want to hear this? I don't know if I want to hear this. Why couldn't you tell me this in session number 9? Why do you tell it to me now? Because I don't want to hear it. Right? So there are things within the journey that you will face, is what the warlock Merlin said to them. What you will face during the journey, okay, but don't eat the food. Stay on your objective. Don't move away from the objective. Okay, because your brother got stuck, your other brother got stuck, your sister is over there, and you're the last one. So he went through the passage till at last he came to a wide, high folding door which stood ajar. And when he opened them, there he saw a most wonderful and glorious sight. A large, spacious hall, so large that it seemed to be as long, as broad as the green hill itself. The roof was supported by fine pillars so large and lofty that the pillars of the cathedral were nothing to them. And the very keystones of the arches had for ornaments clusters of diamonds, rubies, and pearls, and other precious stone. All these arches met in the middle of the roof. Just there, hung by a gold chain, an immense lamp made out of one big pearl, hollowed out and quite transparent. And in the middle of this was a big, huge carbuncle, which kept spinning round and round, and this was what gave light by its rays to the whole hall, which seemed as if his setting sun was shining on it. So this is the midnight sun. The midnight sun is a strange and alien place. It's where we become conscious of certain things that we were not conscious of before. So
I like that he said, Dr. Lahab, I like,
yeah.
and Dr. Lisa, I like that he said that the doors were nearly closed, but they were still ajar.
Mm.
And I think about that being the pathway to the unconscious, and it's the same with us. Our unconscious, the doors are ajar. They're not bolted shut.
No.
We can gain access to them through dreams, through things that come to us, and we go, where the hell did that come from? Through all kinds of things that we say, and we're not even sure of what it is. There's the doors are ajar, but we still have to open it up and walk through the tunnel to get to the main room.
Yeah, it's beautifully said. The door is ajar, because if you're sitting there, like I sit outside and stare at the sun for a bit, and then you daydream, fantasies come up. And so the door is ajar. So where are these fantasies coming from? And what are these fantasies? What are they telling me? What am I supposed to be doing? They're telling me a story, right? When you have a fantasy, the fantasy has a story. You know, sometimes it's like, oh, it's just a fantasy. No, the fantasy is the creation. That's coming directly. That's the landline to the underworld. And it's giving you all the information. It's coming directly from the source. So be mindful of your fantasies. Be mindful of the things, as Dr. Eric says, that come out of your mouth. The stories you tell about yourself, about the world you live in, about your own destiny, about your own future, about your own dreams, about everything that you see and find valuable, because they will give you deep insight as to who and what and where and when. It gives you insight on who and what you are, where and when you're going.
And Dr. Lahab,
yeah,
one thing that I found out is that it's true. Everything you just said is so true. And for me personally, what really was true was about the stories about myself that I didn't tell anybody.
yes,
The stories about myself that I tried to block out of my mind and quit thinking about.
well,
Those
yeah,
were the ones that really, really spoke about what I was and who I
well,
was.
those were parts of you. Those, I think I could say, are parts of us that have been traumatized.
Yes.
And those keep us and hold us hostage to the situation,
They really do.
because they're trying to protect us from repeating the situation. So it has to be dealt with, because it's a glitch, because it makes us relive it by trying to tell us, so this doesn't happen again.
And until we resolve it, it keeps trying to tell us till the day we die.
Well, it terrorizes us, right? That's what it does. That's what you're saying. It's an internal terrorist that basically is on the move all the time, trying to tell you, that you're scared. You should be scared. Why aren't you scared? You should be afraid. Why are you saying I'm not afraid? You are afraid. It's keeping you from moving. It's taking you hostage. Terrorist is taking you hostage, basically. And it's telling you what you should know and how you should act and how you should behave, and to stay away from people. And what it does is it isolates you. Right? It isolates you more. So, for example,
Yes.
the oldest brother sends the sister to get the ball, but she disappears. If he doesn't act, the trauma is going to be what defines him for the rest of his life. I sent my sister and she never returned. I sent my sister and she never returned. And then it's like a broken record. This is why I call it a glitch. It just keeps repeating over and over again. That's why it's imperative to move. That's why it's imperative to seek out treatment and help, because it consumes everything and all the time you have. It consumes whatever time you have, because you're defending against it constantly. Am I irritated? Am I angry? Can I talk to this person? What if this person says something? What if they contradict me? What if they argue with me? What if they say that I'm doing it all wrong? What then? How will I feel? I don't know how I'm going to feel. So this kind of constant conversation about what's going to happen and why and how keeps you from doing the task. It keeps you from talking to the person. You just wanted to have a conversation. But that's not a simple thing. Is he or she going to say something to hurt my feelings? Well, the answer is yes, because you have already created the situation. You said, are they going to hurt my feelings? Absolutely fucking yes. They're going to hurt your feelings because you're already anticipating that they're going to hurt your feelings. You've created the situation you're dreading. And the first thing you say is, I knew I shouldn't have come out. Because you've already created it. It's a bad night. You already knew. And then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Everything happens because I knew it was going to happen. I told you it was going to happen. And that's the complex. That's the archetype.
Yeah.
I told you it was going to happen. You didn't listen to me, did you? Now you feel like shit. You should have listened to me. I would have saved you from that. And on and on and on. And it makes you feel worse and worse and worse. And that's why you isolate yourself more and more and more. But it doesn't go away. So now you're isolated and in pain and conflicted. But it doesn't have to be that way. There is treatment for it. There's treatment for these things that happen to us, that create chaos in our life, that create misery for us, that create despair. We can free ourselves of these things. We get treatment. So I have hope.
I don't know if this is a stretch or not, but I'm going to say it anyway. I mean, there might be something, there might be another kind of carbuncle that I don't know about.
Ooh.
But I know what a carbuncle is when people say they've got a carbuncle. It's a sore filled with toxic pus. And I'm thinking, and
It's a sore filled with toxic pus.
Yeah. And at first I thought, well, that can't be right. And then I'm going with that theme right now. And then I'm going, well, wait a minute. If you spin all of that stuff out, if you spin all of it out of your body, of course you're gonna get better. Of course it's gonna light up the room. It's out of your body.
Yes,
so
of course.
I don't know if that's the carbuncle they're talking about, but if they are, I think it has a legitimate meaning there. Was that too far out?
I don't know. You could go pretty far out. So I don't know. Is it too far out?
And what's interesting, Dr. Lahab, is when I do that,
yeah,
when I do go far, I see you and Dr. Lisa there.
Yes, of course. Well, that's how it works, right? Everybody has to come to consciousness. Dr. Eric, everybody has to come to consciousness. Okay. And the very keystones. Okay. So the roof was supported by fine pillars so large and lofty that the pillars of the cathedral were as nothing to them. They were all of gold and silver and fretted work, and between them, around them, wreaths of flowers composed of, what do you think? Why, of diamonds and emeralds and all manner of precious stones. And the very keystone of the arches had four ornaments, clusters of diamonds, rubies, and pearls. So all the treasures of the earth are present. Basically, that's what they're describing. All the elements of this planet that are of value existed in that place. The very keystone of the arches, okay. And in the middle of this was a big, huge carbuncle which kept spinning round and round. This was what gave light by its rays to the whole hall, which seemed as if setting sun was shining on it. In the middle was his sister, Bird Ellen. They were so happy to see each other again, but his sister was under the spell of the king of elves and could not warn him when he said he was hungry. Roland almost took a bite to eat, but at the last moment remembered what Merlin said and dashed the bowl. The elf king entered, announced that he smelled Christian blood, and challenged Roland to a fight. With his trusty brand, Roland defeated the giant and made him bring back his brothers to life and to disenchantment of his sister. Then the four children left the Dark Tower, never to return there again. So they leave whole. They leave complete. There's 4 of them. So the symbol of the midnight sun is a mystical enlightenment emerging from the unconscious. So when it emerges from the unconscious, that's where we find our way. The unconscious stores all the solutions to all the problems that we have, right? The unconscious is a reservoir that contains all the knowledge of humanity. That's what the unconscious is. This is where we all came from. Deep within it, there's a collective unconscious. The farther you go into the unconscious, the more you reach the collective. And the collective unconscious is that it's our shared experience as beings on this planet and how we evolved. So that shared experience is the collective of unconscious, is the inherited shared experience of humanity. So we hold all the pain, the riches, the fame, the destruction, the isolation, the self-loathing, the love, all of it exists within us. Mother Nature is nothing but efficient when she creates. Her creations are complete. They're not incomplete. There's no one on this planet who's incomplete. Within you, there are answers to all the questions you have. I've been watching the Time Traveler's Wife. I saw episode 2. So episode 2 talks about, this is a new series on HBO Max, if anybody's interested. But episode 2, basically he tells her about a time traveler who teaches him what the do's and don'ts of time travel are. And it turns out that the time traveler is him. He's the one who goes back to his younger self to help him because there's nobody else. And because it's only happening to him and he doesn't. So we are our present, we are our future, and we are our past. And all those pieces of us exist within us. We exist as 5-year-olds, we exist as 8-year-olds, we exist as 10-year-olds. And as long as your physical self is on this planet, you exist, whether you're 100 or 20, all those years, all those experiences are part of you. That's what's passed on to the collective. So this has happened over millennia, that we have passed and passed on this information. That's why we are able and capable to go to the moon. We're able to see things that we couldn't. We could only imagine or fantasize about. Now we can build it. But that creation was always there. We always looked up at the stars, and we always wanted to see what was on the stars. We always wanted to be in other planets. We always dreamt of Mars. Or was Mars dreaming of us? Does Mars need us to come? Yeah. Deep within the unconscious, the warning is, whatever you're looking for could be looking for you.
That's well put.
So, any other thoughts on our fairy tale, the Child Roland, an English fairy tale? Well, with that, we are the IFC's Individuation podcast. And we will be back next week And as always, our parting words,
We are
I am not
afraid.
afraid.
We are not afraid.
We are not afraid.
We are not afraid.
We are the Institute for Conflict, and we are not afraid. This is the Individuation Podcast, and we look forward to seeing, not seeing. Yes, of course, seeing all of you next week. All right. Have a good one.